For instance, we had to build driving from scratch. It's not something you do in Hitman. We had to build shooting from scratch, which sounds strange, but in Hitman, if you get to shoot, you kind of fail the mission. So it's not as developed as much as it should be for a game like Bond. So we spent a lot of time on that early on in development of the game. And there's the cover system and the way we use gadgets is very different. So all of that, you know, has its costs, obviously. I think the first game of the franchise is always quite a big endeavor. Yeah. I like this though, that they redid the shooting, right? I think that's good. I think recognizing, like going into something, having a team that recognizes their faults or their weaknesses and then addressing them instantly. I think that's way better to hear. You know, like they say, like, you know, this is part of their repertoire. This is part of their bag, right? These spy things, but they recognize the things they aren't good at, and then they attack those head on. I think that's very good. Very good. This one I'm actually very interested in. So the other day we covered the Hitman iOS announcement for their or showcase, I should say. Showcase. They played some techno music and showed some Hitman footage. And they're like, but on your phone. Which is cool, I guess. Like I said, I'm not much of a big, you know, a mobile gamer. Let me turn that down just a little bit. I think that is the best. Yeah, that's good for my talking voice. Just maybe a little lower, huh? What about there? I just don't want it to be resin out. I think that's good. Yeah, that feels good to me. Anyway, so the iOS release. So how much Hitman DNA is in 007 First Light? IO Interactive talks James Bond. And I'm pretty curious about this because even though I'm not like super excited for First Light, I have a general interest in it just because 007 GoldenEye on the N64 was such an iconic game to me, is that I always hold out a little bit of faith for this game. So let's take a look at this. If you had to come up with the ideal pairing of a game developer and license, Hitman Studio IO Interactive and James Bond is certainly up there. The collaboration made perfect sense when it was first revealed back in 2020. Oh, you son of a gun. And though we knew this would be a new origin story from the beginning, it's only now we've seen what IO's take on Bond actually looks like. Many were curious to know how it arrived at its vision and how collaborating on such a story character works. So VGC spoke to IO Interactive franchise director Jonathan LaCale. Hope I said that right, brother. On the studio's working relationship with MGM. From its earliest days through to how things have changed with Amazon taking creative control earlier this year. Oh no, guys. Oh no, that's never good. Give me one Amazon game that was good. If you say New World, I don't believe you. I mean, all right, it's not that bad. I kind of like it sometimes. I do throw on New World every now and then and fuck around. So. And you can swim in it now. I think what they've done and changed is better. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Amazon taking creative control earlier this year, and ahead of gameplay reveal later in the summer, how much Hitman DNA we can expect. Finally, we discussed the recent Switch 2 port of Hitman World of Assassination, and words are hard, and if we'll get another shot at the surprise LaFifra elusive target for those who missed out. We'll check this video out here in a sec. I think we've already watched this, and now I've watched this, but we'll check it out again. Fuck it. This is the first time the studio has worked with another property that's not its own. Why was it the right time for IO to do this? And how did those first conversations come around with MGM when he wanted to work with Bond? We have been doing Hitman for approximately 20 years around that time, and there was a wish from a lot of people in the studio to try something else. Of course, not to leave Hitman aside, because as you've seen, we've continued a lot of content, so the plan was always to develop something alongside it. And we were thinking of leaning into our strengths rather than do something completely new, and we are very good at the spy fantasy, it seems. Fair. Bond has been an inspiration for Hitman in the early days. I won't hide that. We had a lot of fans in the studio, so it's kind of a dream come true to be able to work on that IP. There was a pitch being made to MGM at the time, and it was a long shot because they had not accepted a pitch, and they must have received a lot for more than 10 years at the time. So we thought they would never get back into gaming, but you know, let's try. We have something different to put on their table. Oh, I kind of like this. I like that screenshot, guys. And I think what tilted the table in our high five. All right, go, please. I'm reading stuff. Come on. And I think what tilted the table in our favor was the creative approach that you have in Hitman. You always have multiple angles to tackle the problem, where you have those big social environments like public spaces where you can interact in different ways, which felt good. Felt could be a good starting point if we were to make a Bond experience. Absolutely. It's not enough, but it's a good starting point. And for the licensor, it would help us prove to them that you can make video games without shooting every 5 minutes, right? In Hitman, you shoot maybe once per level, or not at all sometimes. I think that opened the conversation at the very least, as from the interviewer. And from there, how did the relationship develop after the initial pitch? Did they then come to you with a certain ideas and themes about what they wanted to explore, or was it more of a back and forth nature once that ball was rolling? Back to the developer, the idea was to always do an origin story from the get-go. The original pitch probably changed a lot since, because you know how it goes, but that was always the case. It comes from us, but it's been received really positivity. But it's been received really positivity. I feel like that's, I think it should be positively, right? What the hell? From there on, crafting it has been a collaborative operation, really. We have calls with the departments twice a week for some of us. What I really like about working with them is that they're really involved in the sense they really care about the project. I was concerned at the beginning when I joined the project that, okay, you're working with a licensor, you're probably a side project, and you send something for approval and don't hear back for a long time, but it's not that at all. They've been really helpful, creatively and operationally, and are very solution-oriented and a lot more daring than we thought. Also because, you know, we're touching a big franchise. Being granted the honor to work on an origin story for the character was fantastic, and it gives us the good and the bad of having a lot of creative freedom. But you also have to come up with a lot of things. And then back to the interviewer. There are many films and there are books, so we can imagine that could be overwhelming, but also in a way quite exciting to try to pick apart what those elements could be for the game. I would say some of the inspiration that we've had, especially when we built the character, was looking at how he was described in the books at first, because we're thinking, okay, we're making an original story. It's not really been something done much before, so how can we go about it? We looked at the source material first, and then I don't think there's a specific strong inspiration from one movie over another. Of course, we've watched all the movies, or most of the movies for some of us. And if you ask me, a cinematic director who is their favorite Bond or movie, there would be different answers based on that. I think you will have a lot of small inspirations from different people in there, and that's what makes Bond Bond. But on the other side, I think that the franchise has evolved over time. The movies from Connery are different from Brosnan and from Craig, and from what we're doing. In our case, we wanted to build an origin story first because it's something that's not been done before, but also it may make it a bit more relatable to an audience that's younger on consoles than at cinema. And that's one thing as well. It would give us a bit more freedom in telling the story that we want to say. So it's partly having your own stamp on Bond, but also with the on and off nature of the films and it being away for a little while means you can introduce this to a newer audience. If you want to talk about inspiration from the movies, there would be some winks here and there, of course. There'd be some winks here and there, of course. That's always a fun part to do. But we're really telling a whole new story, a new take on the origin story of Bond. And we're doing it with the gaming medium in mind. So we're telling it in a different way than the movie would, and we're consuming it in a different way because you're engaging them with them for hours. And you're telling him what to do. The design will guide you in some ways, so in that way, it's a very different way to craft a Bond adventure. Ooh. Was there anything off limits in terms of what you could look at with this game? Or anything MGM didn't want to see or preferred not to see? You mentioned at the start they weren't keen on making a pure shooter, and the creativity of IO's past work helped. Were they very open in what you wanted to try and do? I've never had that question before, so I'll think back. But there is nothing that comes to mind outside of, yes, don't make him a killing machine. That was the first thing. But no, generally. Holly, can you turn that off or go away? It's really loud. But no, generally they've been very open. They've considered every idea we've had. They weren't many massive no's or anything like that. It was always more like, yeah, but we could do it this way, or so it's been very collaborative and a lot of good feedback because they've been working with the franchise for so long as well. So it was great to have them involved in the project, right? I'm sure it was a fun ride for them as well. And when it comes back to working with MGM, it's obviously shifted quite recently with the creative control fully going to Amazon as the creative leads. Can you talk about how that's changed your relationship since that's happened? Yes, in a way, not much, because there's always MGM in the middle, right? And MGM has been the people we've interacted with, and it's the same for most of the production team. So on our day-to-day, not much of a change. And so far, what we've seen with the relationship with MGM now, the franchise is in good hands. You would expect a lot more of an impact, but because MGM has always been the main contact and the main overseer of this project, it's been quite a smooth transition. I bet you, dude, I have a feeling this game is actually going to be good. I have a feeling it's actually going to be really good. I kind of like the Hitman games. We need to play them, but I think we're going to play this when it comes out. And I think it really could. I like the way this guy's talking. He's selling me on this game. He is. I imagine the game being a certain amount through development helps with that as well. A lot of things are set in stone. That's a good point. It was quite advanced as of the deal, and we've had a very solid proposition, so we keep the course. He goes on to say, you can't obviously talk specifics about the future, but what discussions have they been about, and how has this game and your take on Bond fit in with their wider vision? The game right now is made by IO, and has been published by IO Interactive. But in terms of working with Amazon, it opens doors in the sense that it gives us access to their sales team for Amazon.com and Twitch, also for web broadcasting. We are having those talks, obviously, and it facilitates a lot of those things when you're in the same house. So that's great, but that's about it. We were talking about you've had history with Hitman, and it being more of a sandbox design to be openly explored and replayed and approached in different ways. How much of that DNA is in OO7 First Light and in the campaign in particular? There will be some of that DNA, but the game will be very different. You were mentioning it, but Hitman, if you can think of it, is a very open space, and you're coming in and you're very patient and you're methodical and you're going to count the milliseconds before the guard passes. It's a very patient game. Versus First Light, the character in a sense is a bit reckless, and sometimes doesn't have enough patience. In design, that means that we have to give you a sense of forward momentum all the time. So he needs to think quick on his feet. Ooh, I really love, this is one of my favorite screenshots of the game, which we're gonna save that actually, because I really like that. I don't know why, but something about this is nice looking to me. What do you guys think? The developer goes on to say, get out of there. If the other game is more methodical, this one will be more about making you think fast under pressure, giving you a lot of options, and you'll have to think right or left. Or do you take all these guards? Do you blow your cover? We bring you forward all the time. So in that sense, the game is probably not as open. There are open moments, but there are some more linear ones as well. And it would always be done because in this game, compared to Hitman, we are telling a story. So we need to kind of drive you through it. When it makes sense to open it up a little bit more, we do. And when we want to make homage to what the franchise is about, which is sometimes very big stunts and cinematic moments, then we're going to be a bit more linear in that way. People like to replay Hitman games and come back to them. Are there any elements of replayability of the campaign that you're hoping to offer? Silly question. Yes, in a different way. It's the DNA of the studio, so we always want to give you some options to tackle a mission, so you'll have the hitch to want to revisit and go, oh, if I had access to this room that way, if I picked that guard instead of the tracking that one, what would have happened? So there'd be some more of that too. I think something that would lend itself to options in emergent gameplay are gadgets, something Bond is well known for. Can you talk about how that presents an opportunity here? In terms of gadgets, it's a big element of the arsenal of Bond, obviously. You'll have a wide array of gadgets that he gets served from QLab, and he'll be using them in passive or offensive ways. Passive ways would be unlocking a door or hiding a camera, maybe eavesdropping on some conversation. In more offensive way, would be how you're using your gadgets in combat to get out of a situation, or destroying an extinguisher and getting all smoky in the middle of your shootout. So that's how we're approaching gadgets. For more detail, you have to wait for the gameplay reveal. Ooh, we want that. Something else that's been discussed in terms of replayability is the live service element, which this game will have. Oh, poopy. We don't like that. Why is everything gotta be live service? Which this game will have. Can you talk more about exactly what that will look like? It's too early to talk about that right now because it's still some time away, and right now the team is very much focused on delivering an amazing campaign and really focusing on those missions. So we'll talk about that aspect later. Right now, that the team is very much based on the story and the visions of the core gameplay. And that's what we're talking about today. By the way, another spelling mistake. This is a professional journalist. I'm just saying, guys. I'm just saying. This is why AI is going to be taking over everyone's jobs. Right? Right? Sorry, I don't mean to bust your balls, guy, but that's I've counted 2. I've said 2, but I've actually counted 3. I just didn't bring it up because I felt bad. That's what we're talking about today. And gameplay will come also later in the summer. Again, it will be very different from Hitman, but there's an element of replayability to it. So it's safe to say that it's not going to be as replayable as Hitman. I think in a very long worded answer, he said, it'll be a little different, you know, which is okay because I barely finish games, let alone play them twice. On the development side, there was a recent interview with CEO Hakan Abrick about how the Hitman series had become cheaper to make as the series goes on, which is a great contrast to the other modern games and how they're made. Does Bond benefit from that technology, or conversely, is that the case? That the plan is to spend on this game and hope that it sort of pays off with cheaper games in the future, whether that's Bond or otherwise. A mix of those, I would say, because it's not Hitman 4, which would have been an even cheaper game to make. But no, we're benefiting from everything we've done in the past with the Hitman franchise, of course, but we are building a lot of new systems, a lot of new features, because as I was explaining, James Bond is a very different from Agent 47 in terms of gameplay and the fantasy and what we want to tell with the characters. For instance, we had to build driving from scratch. It's not something you do in Hitman. We had to build shooting from scratch, which sounds strange, but in Hitman, if you get to shoot, you kind of fail the mission. So it's not as developed as much as it should be for a game like Bond. So we spent a lot of time on that early on in development of the game. And there's the cover system, and the way we use gadgets is very different. So all of that, you know, has its costs, obviously. I think the first game of the franchise is always quite a big endeavor. Yeah. I like this though, that they redid the shooting, right? I think that's good. I think recognizing, like, going into something, having a team that recognizes their faults or their weaknesses and then addressing them instantly. I think that's way better to hear. You know, like they say, like, you know, this is part of their repertoire, this is part of their bag, right? These spy things, but they recognize the things they aren't good at, and then they attack those head on. I think that's very good, very good. And you hope it pays off over time by having that initial investment. It's too early to say right now because we're focusing on this game, right? We'll see what the future brings, but right now the entire team and ourselves are really focused on delivering an amazing game. There are a lot of expectations when you're revisiting a game or a franchise that has not been active in the gaming world for a while. So the first things first, the game's called First Light. So let's do a good one. On the technology note, the Switch 2 was a key part of this game's reveal. What have you learned about the recent Hitman port to the Switch 2 to ensure that First Light comes to that platform in the best possible shape? That's a good question. First of all, we have an amazing engine, the Glacier engine. And one of its strengths and why we love to keep using it at IO Interactive is that it enables us to bring a game to as many platforms as possible with limited friction, so that in that aspect, it's quite easy for us as long as there is a new platform come out to bring a game on it. As far as the Switch 2 goes, Nintendo has always been a great partner with us. We had brought Hitman as a cloud version on the first Switch, and now the Switch 2 is a powerful device. Powerful enough for us to bring First Light to it natively. The recent version, I'll wait to see that, huh, guys? We'll wait to see that. And as far as the Switch 2 goes, whoops. The recent version of Hitman launched with uncapped frame rate and had some complaints about inconsistent performance. Are graphical settings something you hope to introduce to that game at some point, but also offer in First Light as well to help there? So, for Hitman, the team is working on some of those performance issues right now, and they are addressing it over the summer. It's of course good learnings for us to bring First Light as well. So, all of this will be learnings we bring to the next title. It's the first game we released on that platform, and it was a good test. The team is looking at all that feedback and acting as we speak. So hopefully that's over the next few months. I don't have a precise date, but probably we'll get back to you on that. Speaking to PR, who briefly left the room, he's talking about performance on a Switch 2 and Hitman. So we could probably get back to you with that date as soon as we have one. It's probably in my mailbox, but I didn't check. Okay, that was no. Sorry, dude. You had an elusive target from Bond, Le Chiffre, that wrapped up the other day. Will that return at some point as other elusive targets have done? And also, give players another chance to get that reward in First Light, or is that one and done at this point? Was it a limited time thing? It's a secret that I'll have to keep. You'll find out. So it's possible players might not have had their final chance, basically? I mean, people can see what we've done with other elusive targets and give it their best guess. Hey, that was good. Who is the author of this? I forgive you for those couple spelling errors. Yes, I would love tea. Here you go. Thank you. Tell them just to be quiet just a little bit, guys. You don't have to be perfect, but just a little bit. I just don't want, they're going crazy over there. That was a good article, I think. Do you guys want to watch the announcement trailer? Yeah, fuck it. Why not?
His parents cut their own rope to save him. He watched them fall, then found his way off that mountain. He was 11 years old.
He then started a grand tour of every major boarding school in Britain.
Always at the top of his class.
Always at odds with authority. Same thing in the Navy.
His superiors all praise his instincts.
And they're all in need of early retirement. Nobody knows what to do with him, Mom.
No.
Mom.
And I suspect he feels the same way. But
Mom.
what he did in Iceland...
What he did in Iceland was insubordination. It was ill-disciplined, utterly reckless. He only survived thanks to blind luck. Give me one good reason to put him in the program, Mom.
I think you just covered them all, Greenway.
Fair point. That dude sounded sick.
It's really quite simple. Bond is a bullet without a target. Let's give him one.
Do you have an appointment?
The name's Bond.
James Bond. He's with me.
And you are? Don't think we've had the pleasure.
Now let's not get ahead of ourselves, James.
So you shouldn't have.
We're facing a situation of the utmost delicacy. I need all my pieces on the board.
009 is a master manipulator. Whatever the endgame is, we won't see it coming.
I am definitely hoping for a chess minigame.
Jet lag. Gets me every time.
She's not your friend, Bond. She's an asset.
With respect, Mom. To hell with that.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me, what do you do, James? Lately, headhunting.
First Light. Love that music. All right. All right, let's copy that. I'm gonna put that in the chat. I mean, that's so. All right, I'll say it. I'll say it. I don't know if you guys are thinking it, but I'll say it. That was it looked all right. It didn't look like, it's not like awe dropping. What? Hey, there. Check that out in the link. So yeah, you know, drop in, give him a like. Gotta give him a little bit of love. So I think that's a really good article. Who read this article? So this was by Matthew Reynolds of VGC. So